Charles Freborn. I'm a technical content strategist at Protocol Lab, focused majorly on the IPFS and Filecoin projects. For this breakout section, we're going to be looking at IPFS, right? So at the most fundamental level, IPFS is a protocol for the decentralized web. The current web as we know it, is majorly built on top of HTTP, right? So let's say you want to make a request. You're requesting for, let's say you go to google.com, right? You are actually pointing to a location, to a server on the internet. Do you get? So traditionally, when we make requests, website requests, normally it goes through a route. Like you have a client, which is your browser. Let's say your client is actually like your web browser that makes a request to another server, right? And then the server, from a high-level overview now, the server checks the DNS to check if the site you are requesting is actually available. If it's available, the server sends a request back to the client, right? So you have the request and response, right? So like a two-way communication. So the client makes a request to the server, and then the server sends the feedback back. So if, for example, you want to go to google.com, for example, and then you type triple O instead of double O.com, Google, right? You are going to get a failed request, right? Because apparently the server is just basically is a computer or probably connected systems on a particular locations, which we now refer to as data centers. So the current internet as we know it works through location-based addressing, right? So there is a system. Think about it like there's a system on a particular location, let's say data center, and these systems work as servers to send you back the information you're requesting for. Make sense? All right. So now, so that is what we call location-based addressing, right? Your server is on a data center. Let's say you are the server. I'm the client. So I make a request to you. And then what happens if you move from this location to another location? That means I am unable to get access to that website or that information. Agree? All right, so that is one of the implementation of Web 2, right? So we have the current protocols are based on more like HTTP, for example, is based on more like a location-based protocol, right? And because this kind of localization, these locations, they are actually kind of, so we know where the locations are. If something happens to that data center, for example, let's say there is a power surge or natural disaster or something, we could be literally cut off from that service. Agreed? All right. Recall the issue that happened with one of our most popular social network where it's like everybody was cut off like from the face of the earth, and you're wondering, I don't know if you experienced that, and you were wondering how many of you did you have to restart your phone several times, like my messages aren't delivered, I'm unable to get on. So that is one of the challenges with location-based addressing in the Web 2.0 space. So let me now move it into IPFS as a protocol for the decentralized web, for Web 3. So IPFS is just a protocol, just like, don't worry, I can actually do the presentation without the slides. So IPFS is actually like a protocol for the decentralized web, and it is likened to HTTP, but this time protocol for Web 3. So instead of getting to access content with their location, IPFS uses content addressing. So we call it CID, content identifier. So what's a content identifier? So in the blockchain space, in the blockchain space and Web3 space, we use cryptographic hash, right? So a cryptographic hash, if there's anyone here we are not so many here, but apparently think, okay, I'm going to use Web 2 to try to explain Web 3. So I have a background in lecturing, and I try to ensure that most of my talks are actually kind of impactful, right? So if I'm looking at your face and it seems like I'm not making sense, I may probably walk off the stage, but don't worry, it's not going to get to that. So I'm going to use Web 2 to explain some concepts around IPFS and Web 3, right? So we're trying to walk from the known into the unknown. So SQL, let's pick SQL. SQL for relational database, right? Your tables usually, when you create your tables for SQL, your tables usually have, you probably have to have a unique identifier or a unique key, right? So let's assume that this is a university establishment. My name is Charles. There's a chance that your name is Charles. There's also a chance that your surname could also be Freeborn, just like my surname is Freeborn, right? So to be able to distinguish you and I from the same class, we'll be giving unique identification, unique matriculation numbers if we are in the same university. Make sense? All right. So think about this unique matriculation number. So no two students in university, for example, would have the same matriculation number, right? So that's the same way it is with SQL. So you have a unique ID or unique number, and then so you get the concept about uniqueness, right? So in the Web3 space, and the decentralized platform, the decentralized web, we use cryptographic hash. What this means is, okay, so many analogies coming on my head right now since I'm not looking at the slide. The computer, let me zoom out a bit. I studied computer science, and the computer goes through three major processes, like three basic routes. Inputs, process, outputs, right? Okay, so you input data, the data is processed, it gives you information. So these are the three routes that the computer system will go through. Inputs, process, outputs. In the cryptographic space, in the Web3 space, what we have when we talk about cryptographic hashes, if, let's say, I try to generate something. Okay, let's say I'm running a transaction now on the blockchain. There will be a hash, HASH, that is generated, that is unique to that particular transaction that we are doing. So I'm using the word transaction right now. Such that if I say I want to sell this system to you on the cryptographic space, on the Web3 space, I'm going to generate, once I start up that transaction, there's going to be a unique hash that will be created, a cryptographic unique hash that will be created tied to this system. Do you get? So you can only make a request for this transaction to go through if you have that same hash. Do you get? Do you understand? So if peradventure I make a change, let's say I take off this sticker, I have altered the state of the system. Do you agree? All right, so once I alter it, another hash is automatically generated. Therefore, if I give you that hash and say, I want to sell this thing to you, if you try to make a request with the original hash that I created, the transaction is going to fail. Do you understand? Because I have already altered the state of this system. Make sense? So that hash that is created is called, so that is what IPFS actually does. So we use the content, not the location of the content, to actually save people what they need on the IPFS protocol. That is what IPFS is actually all about. So that way, we eliminate issues about trust, verifiability, and what have you. So we don't get to struggle with issues around, I ordered for this and I got something else. Do you get? Like, for example, if you Google picture of a MacBook, for example, you're going to see quite a number of pictures, maybe this same picture. So how are you able to know which of them is actually the original picture? That is one of the challenges and limitations that we face on the web. So somebody can actually doctor documents, and we're unable to tell which is actually the original document or not. So in IPFS, we use content addressing to actually serve you content. So if the content is altered, the transaction is going to fail. So there will be no need for you to go through all these mini series of verifiability, whether the card number is correct or not, whether you have valid money in your bank account just to make transactions or whatever. So IPFS is the platform that's built to actually power up the web, power up Web3, right? And interesting to know that IPFS is actually currently being supported on some browsers. Like, we already have integration with the Brave browser, and I think there is an extension support for Chrome, and then we're also on Opera. But I'm very sure that we already have full integration for the Brave browser. So that means you could actually get to access Web3 content just like you access. When you visit a site, for example, you have something like HTTPS : / blah blah. So you can actually use IPFS to actually also access sites if you are on the Brave, if you're using the Brave browser. And IPFS is interplanetary, right? By interplanetary, it means that, so how does IPFS work under the hood? IPFS works through what we call nodes or pairs, right? So it is not reliant or dependent on a central server or a location. It is rather dependent on active participants, right? The goal is to ensure that we're able to serve content across the world, interplanetary, irrespective of wherever you are, whether you have access to the internet or not. And it's interesting to note that with IPFS, if you request a content from me via the IPFS protocol, for example, you automatically become a server. Let me use the word server also. So the lady behind you, if she makes a request for, let's say, my website or a file that I want to save to you, she can actually pick it up from you. Do you get? So if I'm cut off the platform, or let's say I'm in a location, maybe due to government restrictions or something, and they say I can't access this, somebody else can actually save it. If you've ever used BitTorrent or ever used BitTorrent where you have to seed. How many of you ever done? Okay, we're not so many. All right, so you get the idea. So that is basically what IPFS is all about. So, like I said, it's distributed, no reliance on a central server, is resilient, offline first, so you can actually get the content whether you are offline or online because you have nodes. Your peers are actually serving you that same content. What else? It's actually built to actually upgrade the web. So maybe we can move to the next slide since it's up. Is anyone there? All right. So basic concept. I've already talked about this. So I've already talked about content addressing and CID, and then it works if everybody is actually participating on it. So the central theme around decentralizing the web, Web3, for example, is that everybody gets to contribute to the building and the advancement of the web. Make sense? All right, so Web3 decentralization has the concept around crypto economics, right? So when you're using the platform, when you're using the web, for example, there should be some form of incentive. Think about it. We all contribute. Each one of us is contributing massively to the web. Whatever platform, so we're not mentioning names right now, but think about the amount of content that you have shared on the web and how much monetary value has actually come into you. Very little. Right? Very little, except for maybe for people like us that do it as a job where we are paid to write articles, for example, like I'm a technical writer. But then the central theme around Web3 and decentralizing the web is having to have the opportunity to actually get to be paid. Crypto economics pushed in into it. For example, I'm wearing a shirt called Filecoin, and I'm not here to tell you to go and buy Filecoin because I'm not. We are not interested in the crypto traders. IPFS has a protocol now Filecoin. So what is this Filecoin that I'm actually putting on? So Filecoin is actually the storage platform for Web3. Filecoin is a storage platform for the decentralized web. All right, so it's a decentralized storage system. So the whole idea around Filecoin is this, that I'll just explain it to you from a very high level. Let's say you have unused storage on your system. So the mission for Filecoin is to be able to preserve humanity's information on the internet over a long period of time. Like, I can't say to infinity because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 100 years, right? But to be able to preserve humanity's information. And we believe in our organization that the internet is actually one of man's greatest invention. So for Filecoin, what happens is this. We call those that are on the Filecoin platform storage providers. So we say, give us your unused storage space on your device. So let's say you have a system that has an unused space of at least, let's say like 1 terabyte, right? So you can set up a node on Filecoin, right? And then you now become like a preserver of humanity's information. So by doing this, you are also now rewarded with a crypto, which is File, which you could actually exchange for Bitcoin, USD or USDT, right? You could literally actually convert it to fiat, right? So you are able to, so storage providers can, okay, I've talked about File already. So using Filecoin as a storage provider, you could actually sell storage in an open space and end units of File, right? So it's not like we are not a central server. We're just in everybody participating. So you have, I'm providing 1 terabyte, you 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte, let's say 10 gig. Do you get? So if you have information, valuable information on a website that you want to preserve over a long period of time, you could literally preserve it such that so each person is saving these copies in bits, right? And then you are incentivized. You're giving some form of crypto, which is our unique token File, which you could actually exchange. So over the long time, if I've stored my information with you, and of course, there's something, let me zoom out a bit. So for Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin uses what they call proof of, what's the word? Is anyone in crypto space here? Proof of stake, right? So in Filecoin, we call proof of verifiability. How are we able to actually know that you are actually storing the information or the data? So you probably have to prove it over time, and then you earn token in the long run. So if I need access to the information that I've asked you to store over a period of time, I would have to still pay you, the storage provider, to be able to retrieve that information. Next slide. So is it all making sense? All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so Filecoin is compatible with IPFS and Web3. It's verifiable. I already talked about proof of verifiability, and then it's a massive decentralized network. So lots of projects are already being stored or preserved on Filecoin. Next slide. All right, so at the core of everything I'm saying is, like I said earlier on, I'm with Protocol Labs, but I'm focused majorly on IPFS and Filecoin. So at its core, IPFS is for content addressing and data discovery, while Filecoin is for persistence and verifiability, right? So with Filecoin, for example, we'll be able to preserve valuable information that would have been lost over a period of time. If you were in my earlier talk in the morning, I talked about how there were quite a number of writings that I would have loved to see articles I wrote several years ago, but I can't find them anymore. So, because there's really no way to actually get to preserve this stuff on the internet, except you just have to keep on renewing your domain continually, right? So, next slide. All right, no problem. Next slide. Okay, so if you're inspired with all of these things that I've actually said and you want to get started, so here's where you get started. I am actually one of the individuals behind the docs that you're going to be accessing. So we have the IPFS docs, which is docs.ipfs.io. You have the Filecoin docs, docs.filecoin.io, and then we have a unique school. We call it the Proto School. So Proto School is just like it's an open source. It's an open school where you could actually get to learn everything about Web3. So just in case you're interested in getting to jump into Web3, this Web3 that we're talking about, we have amazing content on Proto School that you could take advantage of. And then we have a IPFS YouTube channel, and then let me talk about the hackathon, for example. So I am just okay. So my organization, interestingly, is actually based in a distributed team, and I happen to be just the second person in the whole of African continent that's on this project. You should clap now, at least. All right. So when I came on board, I noticed that we are hosting hackathons, right? Global hackathons, particularly. There was this hackathon that just kept on reoccurring, and I was like, okay. So when I checked the metrics, we realized that most of the participants in the hackathons were majorly from the Asian continent, right? You know, open secrets. The Asians are actually big on the Web3 space and crypto and whatever. So I noticed that most of the participants for the hackathons were actually from Asia, and then some from Europe and America, and very few from Africa. And I took it upon myself as a mission to actually get to have lots of Africans come on board to build on top of IPFS and Filecoin and participate in our hackathons. And actually excited to tell you that the prices ranges from $10,000 upwards. So if everything I've said doesn't make sense to you, think of what you can do with $10,000. And because I'm doing developer advocacy for the African, focus majorly on the African continent, so maybe you probably just see me one day in Kampala or in Kigali or in Nairobi. Basically just getting to evangelize IPFS and Filecoin within the African continent. So you could visit the site, and then for first quarter of 2022, we have hackathons, which I'm going to be spearheading, specifically targeted within the African continent. So you should clap now. So I think I'm probably going to have a discussion with the organizing team of this community, or probably even community members. Or if you're active in the community, you could see me after when I come off the stage. So we could just talk about how we could host hackathons specifically targeted around Africans, right? And the money, like I said, is not going to be in Naira. So jumping on this, and start looking at this. And then we also have, we work in the open. So we have a Slack channel, filecoin.io/Slack, and you'll find me there. Just search for Charles Freeborn, and I'll be happy to interact with you and get to meet up with you. Next slide. I think I'm done. All right. Thank you so much. I really wish that you guys so much. So I'm happy to entertain any question right now. Any question? The thing is, you are a provider. We are saying, so the whole idea around Web3 is that we are saying that because you are using the web, you should get some benefits from it. Do you get? All right. So if you are providing storage space, you should be incentivized for it. If I'm creating content on the web, I should be incentivized for it. Do you get? Any other question? All right. Thank you all so much for your time.